As Mr Murrell has still not been sentenced, the hearing is scheduled for 23rd of June. The case remains active for contempt of court purposes and the sub judice rule is engaged. However, given Mr Murrell has pled guilty, there will be no jury trial evidence and sentencing will be overseen by a judge. The risk of prejudice to the proceedings and contempt of court as a result of commentary in Parliament is significantly reduced. Therefore, given public interest in this matter and the low risk of contempt, I exercise my discretion to allow the question and permit discussion in the Chamber. Reputationally, in order to respect the role of the courts, the principle of comity and separation of powers, I expect members not to comment on Mr Murrell's sentencing, i.e. how long he should be sentenced for, etc. Members who wish to speak should press their buttons now and ask short, succinct questions, if chosen, with answers to match. I now call Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the impact on public confidence in political institutions in Scotland following the guilty plea entered by former SNP Chief Executive Peter Murrell in recent court proceedings.
First Minister.
President Officer, Peter Murrell's guilty plea yesterday confirmed that the Scottish National Party, the ordinary members of my party, were embezzled out of hundreds of thousands of pounds of funds. His admission reveals a terrible breach of trust and an overwhelming betrayal. As Assistant Chief Constable Stuart Houston of Police Scotland said yesterday, this was a lengthy and extremely complex case due to the scale of criminality over a 12-year period and the lengths Peter Murrell went to try to cover his tracks. There has been an extensive police investigation into this matter over several years, during which every relevant aspect has been pored over by the authorities, and this has led to a guilty plea for the person responsible. I hope the fact that Peter Murrell is now facing the consequences of his actions can provide the public with some confidence that no matter who you are, the police and Scotland's courts will act with integrity and impartiality in all cases.
Rachel Hamilton.
Thank the First Minister for that answer. Presiding Officer, let's spell out what happened here. In 2021, Nicola Sturgeon denied that there was anything untoward in the SNP's finances. Months later, Police Scotland opened a formal investigation, and in April 2023, a tent was erected by Police Scotland in Nicola Sturgeon's family home, and Peter Murrell was arrested. The SNP's former chief executive appeared in court in March 2025, charged with embezzlement, and Nicola Sturgeon was let off without charge. Yesterday, Peter Murrell pled guilty to embezzling £400,000. Given that it was the First Minister himself who appointed Peter Murrell, can the First Minister tell the public if he believes that his judgment was lacking?
First Minister.
This is an incredibly difficult and painful case, and the actions that have been addressed in court yesterday are the actions of one individual, Peter Murrell, and he has broken the law, he's acted in a criminal fashion and has embezzled out of my party's funds hundreds of thousands of pounds. That is the consequence of the actions of Peter Murrell. Now, my decision to appoint as part of an interview process Peter Murrell 25 years ago, before any of this behaviour started, is, I think, somewhat irrelevant. What has happened here is a complete and utter betrayal of trust by a trusted individual, and that should never have happened. And that's the responsibility of Peter Murrell and Peter Murrell alone.
Rachel Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, I thank the First Minister for that answer again, but John Swinney is desperately trying to sweep this scandal under the carpet and denied there was any problem in 2021, and that is on record. Now, Peter Murrell will rightly face the full force of the law, but the public will question why the former First Minister did not face investigation. Nicola Sturgeon denies any knowledge of her husband's crimes despite using a £700 pen whilst checking the time on her £5,000 watch and sipping coffee from a £3,000 coffee machine. Now, this is unbelievable, Presiding Officer. Normal married couples would question where this money came from. The Lord Advocate is responsible for all criminal prosecutions in Scotland. She sits in the SNP cabinet. Can the First Minister tell the Chamber whether the Lord Advocate will publish the reasons why the Crown Office did not pursue charges against Nicola Sturgeon?
First Minister.
I think we're getting into incredibly inappropriate territory here in Rachel Hamilton's question. The first point I want to make is the idea that I am sweeping this under the carpet. Rachel Hamilton appears to have missed the fact that I held a press conference yesterday afternoon and for 50 minutes answered the questions that were put to me by the media. Jackie Baillie demanded that I do such a thing, and I was putting it in place. Secondly, as Rachel Hamilton might have noticed, I'm on my feet in the Scottish Parliament answering an urgent question. So I think it's worthy of some respect for the fact that these issues are being addressed here by the First Minister. And as for some of the comments that Rachel Hamilton has made, where she is essentially questioning the independent decisions of the prosecution system in Scotland, when I've placed on the record the fact that the public should take confidence from the fact that no matter who you are, the police and Scotland's courts will act with integrity and impartiality in all cases, is an absolute foundation of our judicial system and the application of the rule of law. Now, when I went to the court last Wednesday to take my oath in front of Lord Pentland reminded me and the country that there are three pillars of authority in this state: the judiciary, Parliament and the government. And they are all independent. But he also said for the rule of law to prevail, each must respect the other.
Absolutely.
And what Rachel Hamilton has put on the record today in that question is disrespectful to the judicial system in this country. It is an insult to the rule of law, and it should not be tolerated in this Parliament.
Jackie Baillie.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. We have warned consistently about the rotten culture of secrecy and cover-up at the heart of the SNP government. We've seen this during the Salmond inquiry, the legal challenge to the Information Commissioner, and at its most extreme, the embezzlement of SNP supporters' money. A complaint was made to the police about the SNP's finances in March 2021. In May that year, John Swinney appeared on the Sunday Politics show and said he had no idea why the party's treasurer resigned. In June, Nicola Sturgeon said money hadn't gone missing and there was nothing to see here. I'm not sure if any of that reflects the truth. So, Presiding Officer, can I ask, how can the public trust John Swinney when he is the man who is the architect of this culture of secrecy?
Presiding Officer.
Well, we really are in the depths of it all today with that question from Jackie Baillie. So let me just walk through some of the points that Jackie Baillie has raised today. The first point I want to make is this, that Jackie Baillie has, on the first sitting day of a debate, questioned my integrity and my truthfulness. Jackie Baillie spent the best part of 5 years in the last Parliament questioning my integrity and my truthfulness. And I invite her to look at the election results and see how far it got the behaviour of the Labour Party. And if there's anybody that epitomised that whole smearing of people's characters, Jackie Baillie is at the front of the queue of the last Parliament, and I would have thought she might have learnt the lessons before she came in and started doing it on this occasion today. In addition to that point, the issue that is at the heart of this case is about deception and criminality. That is the responsibility of Peter Murrell. That is what this case is about: deception and criminality. That was highlighted in the statement that I've already made in quoting from Police Scotland. But let me give the Chamber another extract from the Police Scotland statement. It talks about how there was an attempt between 2010 and 2022 to carefully hide his criminality with false receipts and accounting. That is what deception is about. And that is what my party and many individuals are victims of as a consequence of the actions of Peter Murrell. Now, we've taken action as a party to address these issues, and we have good and strong governance in place under my leadership, and that's what my party has a right to expect. But what I think also there's an entitlement to expect in this Parliament, some decent respect for the integrity of individuals, which Jackie Baillie sadly lacked in her contribution today.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, Nicola Sturgeon stated yesterday that she knew nothing of the £125,000 camper van parked in her mother-in-law's drive until the police informed her of it. Yet an SNP source quoted in the Daily Record the week it was seized passed it off as a legitimate SNP resource for a COVID election, describing it as, and I quote, a mobile campaign room. I hope that Police Scotland have unravelled the inconsistency of those two positions. Presiding Officer, if we are to believe the narrative account of the former First Minister that this was not a criminal conspiracy, then it follows that this was, in fact, a catastrophic failure of financial oversight. So can I ask the First Minister, if his party leadership cannot steward the accounts of the Scottish National Party, why on earth should our constituents trust them with the finances of our nation?
First Minister.
I don't think it's the place of Parliament to be carrying out investigations that the police have themselves carried out. I think that is if I was to suggest any of that from this place, I would be breaching my commitments in the Ministerial Code. So if that obligation and burden is on me, then I don't see why it is not on Mr Cole-Hamilton and Parliament. And the second point I would make is that the issues that are at the heart of this case, and I made this in my answer to Jackie Baillie, these issues are about criminality. They are about the rules being flouted. They are about the rules being bypassed. That's what the police explanation was about yesterday, that the rules had been bypassed by, and to quote Assistant Chief Constable Houston, an extremely complex case where Peter Murrell went to extraordinary lengths to try and cover his tracks. So the explanation is very straightforward. There were rules in place and they were flouted by criminality. And that is what the police investigation has found, and that is what has been addressed in the courts yesterday. Now, it is incredibly painful to my party to be experiencing all of this and all of the impact of all of it, but we are the victims of criminality, and that's what I make clear to Parliament is the root of this issue today.
Stephen Kerr.
One of the most damning aspects of all this, and the First Minister should be aware of this, is that Nicola Sturgeon, it's now said, claimed to be cooperating with the police investigation, but her reply to every question was no comment. Does the First Minister have any self-awareness about how all of this looks to the people of Scotland? And one of the things that sticks in the throats of a lot of people is that the trial was supposed to take place before the election, but was mysteriously postponed to a date after the election. There is undoubtedly a political advantage to the SNP because of that postponement. So why was the hearing postponed, and who authorised the date's change of the proceedings?
Before the First Minister intervenes, I would remind that the judiciary is independent in Scotland.
Presiding Officer, I don't know if Mr Kerr misspoke, but Mr Kerr said the trial was supposed to take place before the election. That is not a truthful statement or an accurate statement. The trial was never scheduled before the election. There was a preliminary hearing in February at which a judge, a member of the Court of Session, agreed to the preliminary hearing taking place on the date it took place, which was yesterday. Now, if we as a Parliament, and this is me back to what I said about what Lord Pentland said to the court when I took my oath last Wednesday, if we start second-guessing and pointing the finger, which is what Mr Kerr has just done, pointed the finger at judges exercising their judicial independence, then we are not respecting the independence of the judiciary. And I want to make one thing clear to this Parliament. I will, to my last breath, defend the independence of the judiciary to decide on these issues, because that is the protection for everyone in the face of the rule of law. It's a foundation of our society, and we should dabble with it at our peril in the fashion that Mr Kerr has dabbled with it today.
Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the First Minister agree with those who suggest that it is inappropriate for serving government ministers to sit on the SNP's National Executive Committee while serious questions hang over its handling of concerns around SNP finances?
No, because the constitution of my party requires, for example, that I'm a member of my party's National Executive Committee. This Parliament has chosen me to be the First Minister of Scotland, and I cannot see how I lead my party if I'm not a member of its National Executive Committee. The internal governance of my party is a matter for my party, and also, I might say, the internal governance of my party is in a very strong position, as we've just demonstrated by the way in which we prepared for and took forward an election campaign that resulted in the 5th successive term of an SNP government and the election of 58 members of the Scottish Parliament with over 38% of the vote. That's a party in good shape, in my view.
Polly McNeill.
I do agree with the First Minister that we should not second-guess the courts. But does the First Minister agree that how such decisions, such as a trial, are made do matter to the public, and how they view all government institutions and decisions that they make, that not only are they fair, but they must be seen to be so? And the legal process may be at its end, but does the First Minister agree that the accountability for what happened in the first place cannot be ended, not just for the sake of party politics or parliamentary politics, but for the sake of all those whistleblowers and people who challenge institutions in the first place, when it's a very hard thing to do?
First Minister.
Polly McNeill knows the justice system well, because she's a long-serving member of the Criminal Justice Committee of this Parliament. Indeed, she and I served on that committee for 12 months in 2023-24. So she will know that the timetabling of individual cases and the possibility of delay is a very, very regular item in court scheduling and court processes. So this is not. So the point I made to Mr Kerr, where he was completely wrong about what he said, was that the decision to defer the hearing from February until May was not some exceptional incident. That happens on a very regular basis. Indeed, I might even go as far as to say, I might be stretching it to say it's invariably the case, but it is very much the case that hearings are delayed. And then when it comes to the question of accountability, well, the accountability here is the fact that an individual has perpetrated criminality at the expense of the hard contributed donations of my party members, the length and breadth of the country. And Polly McNeill will know, like me, we both work in voluntary political parties. We know that members work hard to raise money and they make their contributions, and I'm profoundly grateful to every one of them and I'm horrified by what has happened in this case. But the accountability for that is with Peter Murrell, who has betrayed the trust of the members of my party.
Graham Simpson.
Thank you. Scrutiny is important in this place and it's important in political parties. But scrutiny was shut down in the SNP over its finances, and people were basically told to button it. Nicola Sturgeon said there was nothing to see. Does the First Minister now regret that that approach was taken?
First Minister.
I don't want to sully the atmosphere tonight, but I don't think Reform UK are in the strongest position to challenge me about financial transparency, when Nigel Farage is dodging accountability on a £5 million contribution made to him personally, for which he has not made proper accountability. So forgive me for being a little bit sceptical about people who run into the greenhouse throwing stones around on this occasion. I am the leader of the Scottish National Party, and I can assure Mr Simpson, and this will be vouched for by my colleagues who are here with me today and vouched by party members around the country. I lead an open and transparent culture within the SNP. Last Saturday, our party National Executive Committee met. The members of that executive had in front of them full transparency about the management accounts of my party to the 30th of April 2026. It highlighted the amount of money we were raising to fund our election campaign, contributed by decent members of the party around the country. What we were spending our money on to make sure we could have so many SNP MSPs elected to this Parliament, more than any other party in this chamber. So the party's National Executive had a full, open and transparent account of the way in which the party is run under my leadership, and I'm glad that we were able to confidently look back on a successful election that had been well funded by our party members around the country.
And Amanda Bland.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to thank the officers involved in Operation Branchform for their integrity and commitment that led to Peter Murrell's admission of guilt early on in the process. Maybe we can all agree that this is a shameful episode in the history of Scottish politics. I ask the Scottish Government, what internal mechanisms have you and plan to put in place to ensure that this never happens again?
First Minister.
Well, let me associate myself with the point that Amanda Bland has made about the police officers, because they have conducted an investigation which, in collaboration with the Crown, has resulted in a compelling evidence base being made available to in this case, which has resulted in a guilty plea at the earliest and first possible opportunity. In relation to, I'm not quite sure who Amanda Bland is targeting her question at, but what I will say in relation to the two organisations I have the privilege to lead, in the Scottish National Party, we have very stringent financial controls in place, and as I've just recounted to Graham Simpson, the transparency to match. And in relation to the Scottish Government, we have, of course, the comprehensive range of financial measures in place to guarantee accountability to Parliament and the public. The Government itself is audited by Audit Scotland. All of the issues are discussed and aired openly by the Finance Committee of the Parliament, of which you, convener, were a very distinguished chair in the last parliamentary session. And I think members are open to scrutiny by members of all political parties. I'm not sure what the composition of the Finance Committee will be, but there is every opportunity for members to scrutinise the public finances of Scotland. And that gives me the opportunity to make it absolutely crystal clear, in case anybody is in any doubt about it, that the issues that affected the court process yesterday affected the funding only of the Scottish National Party and not public funding in relation to the Scottish Government. So it gives me, Amanda Bland's question gives me the opportunity to state that clearly on the record.
Thank you, First Minister, and apologies to members who were not called for that urgent question, but it's